You talk about Tom Aspinall having 7 punches per minute. Well, Marcin Tybura takes about 7 punches per second and can take it.
What's up, everybody? Laura Sanko here, joined as always by the amazing, the great Dean Thomas, who has been very patient with me today because I am here on the ground in London. And as is the case with all international travel, everything that could go wrong has gone wrong, but we are here. We're making it work. And Dean Thomas has been a very patient man with me, so I appreciate him as always.
Trust me, I know how the game is. I am not tripping. And I'm going to be out there tomorrow too. So this is kind of a forecast of what I'm going to have to deal with starting tomorrow. So I'm not tripping. I'm just glad that we were able to do this and we can add some maybe some value and give some insight as to what's to come.
Yes. Well, I appreciate that. I think we've got all the kinks worked out by the time you get here. The whole hotel did not have internet, but we're good now. I think still remains to be seen. But regardless, let's talk about these fights, because every time the UFC comes to London, I feel like something really, really special happens. And this time we have another great main event, Tom Aspinall, ranked number 5 versus Marcin Tybura, ranked number 10. And, I think for a lot of people, this isn't necessarily like a blockbuster pay-per-view level card, but if you really look into the matchups on this card, there's going to be some fun fights. And I, in particular, am really excited about this main event because, man, I have been so high on Tom Aspinall ever since he entered the UFC. I don't know about you, Dean, but I think he's got a very high ceiling in this heavyweight division.
Well, I mean, I think everybody who understands the fight game could see Tom Aspinall and see that he passes the eye test. He checks off a lot of boxes. He's got great feet. He's got great hands. He's got good jiu-jitsu. He got good IQ. Like, there's a lot of things that he does well. And then his last performance, not the one against Curtis Blades where he got hurt, but his last actual performance against Volkov, where he just took him down and submitted him with ease. I mean, he showed a lot in that fight in that little bit amount of time. So anybody who has seen Tom Aspinall fight is excited about him coming back because the heavyweight division needs a guy like Tom Aspinall to come in and try to shake things up.
They absolutely do. I mean, the odds are pretty lopsided here, but we'll talk too about some of the things that Marcin Tybura brings to the table, and they may not be the sexiest of things, but they're tools nonetheless, and the experience that he has inside the UFC as well as outside of the UFC. I mean, he's seen about all you can see in the heavyweight division. So he's a guy who's not going to get flustered easily by the tools that Tom does bring to the octagon. But before we get too deep into the fight itself, let me run through the tail of the tape here, because this is actually a really interesting one for a number of reasons. On one side, in terms of experience, which I know is something that I'm sure we'll talk about, you got Tom Aspinall, who's 5-1 in the UFC. And that last fight, as you mentioned, against Curtis Blades, really ended because of an injury. So I feel like for some reason, a lot of people wrote him off after that one, but they shouldn't have, because he blew his knee out really, really early in the fight. We could be looking at a guy who's 6-0 in the heavyweight division. And how crazy would that be? On the flip side, though, you got Marcin Tybura, 11-6 in the UFC. Now, the man's taken a few losses, but that is a tremendous amount of experience at the highest level in this sport. And I definitely think that that's going to be a factor in this fight. When you look at the stats, man, does Tom Aspinall jump off the page. The only thing that you have to keep in mind, though, is that these are couched in only 6 fights. And most of its fights have been very, very short. So when you see things like 100% takedown accuracy, well, that's because he's gone 4 for 4. I mean, it's still good, but it's 4 for 4. And 100% takedown defense. People have only tried to take him down 2 times. So you can't get too excited about the superlatives, but I do think they demonstrate just what a tremendous skill set Tom has. Another thing that jumps off the page to me here is the striking accuracy percentage. So Tom Aspinall, 65.7% striking accuracy, 48.6 for Marcin Tybura, which actually is still above UFC average, but Tom's striking accuracy is extraordinarily high. And then you kind of work your way down here in terms of volume. That's absolutely the one that jumps off the page to me. Tom Aspinall lands 7.41 strikes per minute. And Marcin Tybura actually is on the higher-ish end of things at 3.55, but 7.41 strikes per minute for a heavyweight it's ludicrous. He also averages, Tom Aspinall, I should say, also averages 2 submissions every 15 minutes, which is extremely high. So on paper, Dean, he's a guy who is really, really easy to get excited about, isn't he?
Oh, Jesus. I mean, and those are just the numbers, but just watching him, you can get excited about him because he moves different. He's built different than the other guys. And I almost think that he dodged a bullet in the last fight against Curtis Blades, to be honest with you, because we don't know how he was going to do against a wrestler. And to face a wrestler like Curtis Blades is not really where you want to test it and see how you're going to do. So the fact that he got hurt, obviously that was misfortunate. But the fact that he could go back and go, all right, I still want to work on my wrestling a little bit. So I think that he might have dodged the bullet in that one, because I would have hated to have seen him lose to a guy like Curtis Blades because his ceiling is so high. So now he's back. He's fighting another guy who is extremely durable. You talk about Tom Aspinall having 7 punches per minute. Well, Marcin Tybura takes about 7 punches per second and can take it. So yeah, so the matchup is perfect. It's a perfect matchup in terms of, is Tom Aspinall that dude that we think he is? And there's nothing more disheartening than having your high hopes for a guy and they not turn out to be what you think they're going to be. And it's unfortunate sometimes. And I'm just hoping for my sake, because I've loved watching Tom Aspinall fight. I think he's got just a tremendous skill set and tremendous coaching staff behind him. And he's young and he's been brought up in this game. His father had him doing this stuff since he was a young boy. So he's been brought up in this game. So I'm hoping that he is what we think he's going to be.
I'm with you. I think about every weigh-in show where we've ever done lists of heavyweights or who should fight Don Jones or who should do this or who's this or that. I'm always throwing Tom Aspinall in the mix, because to me, he is a truly rare gem in this particular division, where he's about as well-rounded as they come. I mean, he's got all the things you'd want in a heavyweight. Tremendous hand speed, as you said earlier, excellent footwork. One of the things that I don't think he gets enough credit for from the fans, I know he does from you because you know the background, but we don't get to see his ground game that often in the UFC because he's been knocking guys out. Honestly, the guy is at his base a jiu-jitsu fighter, which is exciting to think about in this division. And we've seen what guys who have a strong jiu-jitsu and wrestling skill set can do at heavyweight. I'll be interested to see if that becomes a factor in this one. And one thing I did want to ask you, because I'm interested, you're such a vet in this game. I know you've seen this happen many, many times. I think on paper, this is a really difficult matchup for Marcin Tybura. It's a difficult matchup for anybody. However, I think Tom Aspinall has to be really wary of getting too drawn into the moment, because last time he was here at the O2, the situation with Curtis Blade happened. It was this tremendous buildup to this huge moment for him. He was supposed to go out there and smash Curtis Blades and have the O2 arena go crazy. And instead he went away with an injury and has been out for quite some time, rehabbing that knee and sitting on the sidelines and watching the division not pass him by, but it's changed tremendously, obviously, with the return of Jon Jones. I guess my question to you is, what does he need to do mentally to not allow the excitement of the O2, wanting to go out there and sort of recapture that magic, not change his fight style too much to allow him to disrespect a veteran the level of Marcin Tybura?
Yeah, that's a dangerous game to play against a guy like Marcin Tybura, because he is so, like I said, he's so durable. And he is willing to go through that fire to get you tired and to get you overconfident and then come back on you. So he's willing to do that. It'll be interesting to see if Tom Aspinall can pace himself. That's going to be important for him in his fight. That's another layer of IQ that we need to see from him, is him being able to say, okay, I know I'm better than this guy. Like when you look at all the skill sets, I'm better than this guy at all the skill sets, but I can't let that get to my head and try to put him away too early or try to do too much too early to where I tire out, because Marcin Tybura is not that guy. That's when he comes back and beats you. That's how he's got some wins on his record. Exactly. He probably shouldn't, because guys underestimated him as the fight goes on.
He did that to Romanov, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a fight where he was a tremendous underdog and really got mollywopped in the first round. And then because, as you say, he's just so durable, stuck around to the second round, and then Romanov had nothing for him. I mean, he was
Yeah.
just so worn out from that first round, and Tybura was able to turn the tables and completely flip the script and get a win that on paper, again, another win he shouldn't have gotten, to be honest with you.
Well, so for Tom Aspinall, he has to remember who he is and just say, you know what? This is just another fight. And sometimes it could be hard because it's going to be in London, probably the most electrifying venue in the world on fight night. You know, being in London, his people there. So it's going to be wild and massive. He's got to find a way to embrace that energy, but also keep himself contained and be patient and pace himself and be willing to just dominate this fight and not and find the finish if it comes, but don't force it because
Don't force it.
but because when you get that crowd behind you and you start getting all antsy and you start pumping your chest, you start looking for that finish and that anxiety starts to creep up on you. You start to panic a little bit if it doesn't come, or you start to just get a little tense, and that tension causes you to make mistakes. Tom Aspinall cannot afford to do that against a guy like Marcin Tybura.
Absolutely. When you are dealing with a fighter who's coming back from a pretty significant injury, if you're his coach, you're his corner, what are some of the things that you tell him in terms of, I guess, the mentality of trusting a knee and of like you say, being able to stay focused on the fight that's present and right in front of you and not getting sucked into the crowd?
Well, the thing is, you just got to remember that the fight is the fight. So whether there's a crowd or not, it's you and the other guy. And you always have to remember that. It's just you and the other guy. If you take the crowd away, it's still you and the other guy. You bring the crowd there, it's still just you and the other guy. And when you start to think differently and you put too much into the crowd and you start doing things out of character, that's when you start hurting yourself. So Tom Aspinall cannot be out of character and do anything different than he does in training, because if I'm his coach, I'm saying, listen, this is just like training. If this guy were to come into the room, you would smash him. So treat this like the room. Put him in your room. So hopefully in camp, they reminded him to say, listen, this is how you are going to fight. This is your pace. This is the warm-up. This is the pace. This is how we get it done. Now, fast forward to the actual fight with the crowd. All that energy has to stay the same. You have to be consistent with it, because when you start changing it, now you're rolling the dice on the results. You want to have consistency so that you can have consistent results.
And for Marcin Tybura, I mean, there are certainly, we're talking a lot about Tom Aspinall here for a good reason, but it's not as though the man doesn't have any skills. He's got some nice striking, changes his stances a lot. He's got really good fundamentals. He can mix it up with the grappling. If you're cornering Marcin Tybura, what are you telling him to do? What's the basic game plan you think you'd send him out there with?
Just have as much fun as you can. No,
I'm
just playing. No,
that's why I asked you the hard question, because when I asked it of myself, I was like, oh, I don't know.
No, the reality is that you can never go into a fight not thinking that you're going to win. You have to go in thinking that you can win and that there are opportunities for you, but you have to be realistic about that. And you got to say, all right, listen, this guy's a little quicker than you, so it's probably not going to happen too early. Let's not fall for no feints. Let's make sure we stay in position, not give him too many targets to hit. You're durable, but we don't want to wear ourselves out by letting this guy hit us and then we get tired or hurt in the process of going through that fire. So Tybura has to make sure he stays in position, doesn't fall for too many feints, and he's a better top grappler than bottom grappler. So he's going to have to make sure he doesn't get taken down, because if he gets taken down, I don't imagine him being able to get up off his back or even finishing the round off of his back. So I would be more, like, for as weird as it sounds, I would be more concerned about having Tom Aspinall on top of me if I'm Tybura than the striking. So I would say, listen, just cover up on the feet, but man, don't let this dude take you down. Like, I think you can take his punches better than you're going to be able to do on the ground.
I completely agree with you. And it's hard to find obvious holes in Tom's game, but there are a few moments where he has gotten clipped, whether it was Arlovsky, obviously Curtis Blades was clipping him at the time that his knee got injured, but he was doing it before the knee went. And what he was doing was he was countering kicks. Tom likes to come forward, pressure super hard, get right in your face. He's very confident in his range. And so he doesn't necessarily always have the highest guard when he's right in that range. And I think that could be an opportunity for Marcin Tybura is, counter some of those kicks. Just look for those opportunities, but you got to stay safe early in the fight and look to extend this, because, fifth round is new territory for Tom Aspinall. It's going to be new territory for Marcin Tybura as well in the UFC, but he's had a much larger number of 3-round, decision style fights than Tom has. So I think, maybe drag this out a little bit if you can do it.
And if there's, oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing is you got to stay in position. You got to make sure that you don't make any crazy mistakes, and you just can't, like, as bad as it sounds, is that this is a 5-round fight. So you don't want to lose in the first 3. So you want to at least make it through the first 3. You can get 10-8 in the first 3, but still you're going to have a better chance in that 4th and the 5th round.
Yep.
Now for Tybura, like you said, if there was any knock I had on Tom Aspinall, it was that he does hold his head up high when he's throwing punches in the pocket. He's looking where he's punching, and that's what you want to do. But at the same time, not at the expense of holding your head up the way Tom Aspinall does. Tom Aspinall has a tendency to hold his head up when he's throwing punches on the inside. There's a moment where Tybura may be able to take advantage of that. I don't know if he's going to have the speed to capitalize, but it's there.
It is there. It is there. And I agree with you that on the ground, it's not there at all.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, if he gets taken down, like, I think the fight is over. I don't see him getting out of that position.
Have you seen footage of Tom grappling, like, outside of the UFC, just in grappling situations or training footage? Like, he is lights out, a phenomenal submission guy.
Yeah. And you could tell, man, he's a young kid. Like, you could tell he was like a young kid. He was probably the biggest guy in the room of training with smaller guys, and he learned how to have a small guy type game, and he's fast and I think he's in good shape. And now, and the one thing and the other knock that I had against Tom Aspinall was, I said, because he looked so young, and I said, man, he might not be developed enough or big enough for these guys. And then when I saw him in person, I was like, oh my God, he's at least 6'5". He's 6'5". And I'm thinking, this dude is like 6'5", and he moves as well as he does.
And he's thick.
Man, he's big. He's not. He's thick. He's big. He's thick. He moves so good. He's going to be a problem. I knew he was going to be a problem. Listen, I'm just, and this is the perfect fight for him to come back to at home. A guy who's not that dangerous, but if you don't fight a good fight, you could lose. Like, if he doesn't fight a great fight, he could lose. It's a possibility that he could
100%.
lose. But the reality is he's a heavy favorite. He should be the heavy favorite. And he should be able to walk away with this one pretty easy.
All right. Well, I'm not even asking your pick because I think I just got your pick.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious who I think is going to win this fight.
Yeah. Same. And actually, you and I are working the desk together, so I have to give a pick on this one. So I'll give it here as well. I also, surprise, picking Tom Aspinall on this one, and I do think he'll be able to get a finish. I was going to say the first round, but like you say, Marcin Tybura, very, very, very durable. So I'm going to go 2nd round TKO. That's my prediction.
2nd round TKO.
TKO.
Sounds like I like it. I tend to agree. I mean, I'm not sure if I have to go that round. 2nd round TKO sounds about right. Honestly, I'm going to go first round. I'm going to go first round.
All right.
I think Tybura gets stopped. I think that in the process of him trying to do a bunch of damage and like trying to sustain the damage, I think that the ref says that you've had enough.
Yeah. Well, both Dean and I are picking Tom Aspinall in this one, and what a man! If that happens, Katie barred the door for some really fun matchups in the future. Maybe John Jones possibly could be a very interesting one for him, but we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We got some big fights this weekend. As always, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to One on One, and we'll be bringing you a co-main event breakdown as well. So keep a lookout for that. We'll see you there.